SafetyFM.com with Jay Allen. Changing safety cultures, one broadcast and one podcast at a time.
Welcome to Safety FM, where we talk about safety that's truly inspired by you.
Hello and welcome to Safety FM. This episode of the broadcast and the podcast has been brought to you by Safety Focus Moment. They're consultants that want to help you get to the safety culture that you've been looking for. For more information, go to safetyfocusmoment.com. Hello and welcome to Safety FM. This is Jay Allen. Well, this week, if you're in the United States, you'll be enjoying Thanksgiving on Thursday, and I know today is Tuesday as we normally release the podcast. On today's podcast, we have James Frederick. He works within the Health and Safety Environment Department for the United Steelworkers Union. Enjoy our conversation with Jim Frederick here on Safety FM.
Safety FM. Changing safety cultures. One broadcast and one podcast at a time.
Well, hello and welcome to Safety FM. I have James Frederick on the line. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks.
James, I had the opportunity of actually meeting you at a conference/workshop putting on in Atlanta, and you gave a speech during that particular workshop, and it really kind of intrigued me in regards of how the United Steelworkers tie in everything in regards of safety, and I wanted to have you come on and kind of just tell us how your path has started, and how did you get involved in safety, and how did you make it all the way to the United Steelworkers?
Okay, sure. So I've been at the Steelworkers Union for just around 25 years and have been in the Health, Safety, Environment Department with the union during that time period. I actually came to the Steelworkers with a merger of two unions. The United Rubber Workers merged with the United Steelworkers, and I was the health and safety person at the Rubber Workers. Prior to that, I worked with one other union, and when I came out of school with degree in health and safety, I was interested in the worker perspective of health and safety and found my way into this work. And the path of the most recent 25 years here at the Steelworkers has been one that's really quite interesting. It's very broad and diverse, and if there's any time that there's some downtime, I just need to wait a few minutes for the next email to pop in or the next phone call of something that needs our attention and help.
So when you start getting involved inside of safety, once you actually graduate, when you started coming out, do you start looking at from the mentality of using behavior-based safety, or do you kind of already have like the book mentality of safety, or what are you using when you first come out?
Well, that's been a while back, but I certainly was not someone that was a proponent of the broad family of the behavior-based safety genre or arena. I had always had the kind of fundamentals built in with me that said that injuries are caused by exposure to hazards, and the best way to fix hazards is to follow the hierarchy of controls and address those hazards. In order to address those hazards, I have always taken the perspective that the best way to find hazards is to talk to workers that are working around them, and that workers understand better than any of us what the unsafe conditions that they're working around and with, and the changing nature of those conditions are, and that through talking with them and most importantly listening to them, we can get to a much better perspective to manage health and safety.
So when you're coming from a union environment and you start having these conversations with, let's say, for instance, a client or somebody that you're actually doing business with, and you're not able to see eye to eye with your format of safety to what they believe from their company standpoint, how do you normally get that to work out?
Yeah, so sure. So for us, our, I guess, clientele, as you said, our clientele is really our members, the members of the Steelworkers Union who, go to work in their workplace and are members of the union. We have a collective bargaining agreement, a contract with their employer to provide the work at that workplace and do whatever they're doing. For the Steelworkers Union, we represent workers in a broad array of industries and workplaces, from obviously manufacturing steel and other metals to workers in paper sector, to workers in the oil refining sector, to rubber workers, as I mentioned earlier, and a whole host of other industries that we represent workers in. Outside of the manufacturing arena, we also represent workers in things like healthcare and other public sector workplaces that are equally and kind of vitally important. So our primary constituency is our members. They come to work, they work within the construct of the collective bargaining agreement and pay dues to the organization that funds the work we do. And so our department here at the International Union works on behalf of them and their local union to try to help them. When we are working with our local union and their employer, that is where we would sometimes run into a situation where we can't quite see eye to eye or agree on a situation. And we try to fall back on a couple things. First is to rely upon the facts and the reality of the situation and to demonstrate what our concerns are and why they need to be addressed. And secondly, we also rely upon our members to make certain that they are conveying their concerns to their coworkers, to their direct supervision, and to other management at the facility in an effort of improving health and safety in that workplace.
So if I'm somebody who is actually interested in joining the union and wanted to understand what exactly are the benefits, what exactly do you normally discuss with them?
Well, sure. So for a manufacturing union, we identify workers in a workplace, and an organizing campaign would take place. That involves kind of a separate group from us in health and safety, but we sometimes are involved if health and safety issues are a concern or a priority to them. An organizing campaign will take place, and it will eventually result in typically in a vote that's held by the National Labor Relations Board. And if the result of that vote is 50% plus one would like a union in that workplace, it takes the next step into becoming a unionized facility. The next step in that process is for the union and the employer to sit down and negotiate a first contract. And in the contract is where much of the kind of you referred to as benefits occur. And so things like retirement pay, other benefits, healthcare, dental, eye insurance are often something that is included in an agreement in a workplace that may or may not have had that prior. But also, some other important things, health and safety being one of them, and having a union in a workplace provides a voice to those workers to have a say in what is going on in health and safety. That's not to say that employers without a union in their workplace don't talk to their workers about health and safety, but it's to provide more of a firm format of how health and safety operates from the workforce and their concerns through their representatives through the union to the employer, and that communication then going back and looping back and completing the circle. We certainly find that our members in workplaces that have an effective and well-functioning health and safety committee in their workplace are able to make significant improvements around health and safety matters and issues in those workplaces to improve the process, engage with the employer, and hopefully have a positive outcome at the end of that process, or as that process goes on and on and on.
So then, out of curiosity, and being as we were at the same workshop, how did you become aware of human organizational performance?
Oh, great question. I'll have to rely upon some brain cells that are way back in the back of my head to remember exactly when, but 5, 6 years ago, well, actually, probably let's step back one step further. We started looking into some of the work that was being done around high reliability organizations, as well as some of the work being done with human performance as it interacted with worker health and safety a decade ago and longer. We host every 18 months we host a health and safety conference. It's open to all of our local unions across North America and their employers. It's a labor management conference, and we included discussions in workshops on both of those topics years ago, again, probably a decade or more ago. From kind of those perspectives out there in the world and from some other influences, I believe that the human organizational performance arena really came about, sometime since then. And we particularly, I guess, in the department, several of us started reading some of the works of people like Sidney Decker, like Todd Conklin, and others over the years to better understand what some folks were out in the world doing in this arena. One of the areas that we truly were initially intrigued with was kind of the rejection of the blame the worker mentality that we see in many workplaces where we represent, where there's the blame and shame and retrain philosophy associated with injuries that take place in that workplace. And what we see from that is truly the result being that people stop talking. People stop communicating their concerns, stop talking about those hazards that we talked about a few minutes ago. If the premise is true that the best way to find out about the unsafe conditions and the hazards in the workplace is to talk to the workers, when they stop talking, we're never going to find out about them. And health and safety is a tough road. Managing health and safety in any given workplace is difficult, challenging, and that's when we know about the unsafe conditions and the hazards. It's a tough road to go through for those things we know about. But when we don't know about an unsafe condition or a hazard as a result of folks stop talking about them, then we'll never have them properly addressed in the workplace. And those uncorrected hazards are just laying out there in wait to injure the next person.
So as you go with this forward-thinking mentality in regards of what you want to change, and you said there was a few of you that had read these different books before you started incorporating or really taking a deep dive inside of it, how does this actually affect, I guess, really the union when you come back and you go, this is what we want to move forward with? How are you able to kind of change the mentality overall amongst the whole group?
Yeah, so I think it's very fair to say that one, it's for us. This is for the Steelworkers Union. This is a work in progress. This is certainly not something that we've completed or accomplished. I think we're really at kind of the beginning stages of exploring the integration of some or all of the concepts of human organizational performance or new view of safety into the work that we've done for a very long time. But that is important to kind of juxtapose against the fact that a number of the elements of that thinking, of the new view thinking, are things that we have been doing already for a very long time. So just as a couple of examples, learning from normal work is a concept associated with these views of going out and, like we've been talking here through this conversation, talking to workers about their work, understanding what the work is performed really looks like, to know where and when the unsafe conditions and hazards are going to have the potential to affect the work and the workers. Again, that's been something we've been doing for decades and decades, is relying upon our members in the workplaces to talk to us and talk to their local union safety and health committee members and talk to the employer safety and health representatives and their supervisors and whomever else about what they recognize as being an unsafe condition or a hazard in their workplace. We also have for many, many years kind of before this, infamous black line, blue line chart of work as imagined versus work as performed was in place, I think we at the union recognized that interface where that hazard and the work as performed came into contact and an injury or an event occurred. We've recognized that forever as being an issue that has to be addressed. We often, after that, saw that workers sometimes, many times, would be disciplined for not following the procedure, the black line. But what we now know is this is very normal and going on all of the time. So through that, we would see safety-related discipline. And again, typically that was happening or is happening today after an event, after an injury, after something has triggered the attention to that. A lot of focus comes into play of that interaction of the work as performed after that event. And one of the things that has happened for decades is the union typically responds to the negative disciplinary action or whatever by filing a grievance on behalf of that person that is the victim of that discipline, to make certain that we're properly representing them, to explain that this is the work that was done over and over again, and this time, unfortunately, this event occurred. We certainly don't want to see the injuries. We certainly don't want to see the unwanted events, but we do want to better understand the work is performed and make sure it can be done in the boundaries of what is not going to cause the event to happen.
And when you start talking about safeguards, of course, it's something's going to occur, but you have it already planned out on it's supposed to occur inside of here. But on the rare occasion, you might have something that falls out of the ordinary. And that makes sense. But when you start having the conversations with people and you go, hey, this is a philosophy and it's really not a program, what are some of the pushbacks that you get?
Yeah, so I think that's, again, a great question. I think one of the challenges that we face in workplace after workplace is the fact that the safety and health program of the month or the week or the quarter has been such a trend over the last number of years or decades that everyone at the workplace, management, the union members, and anyone else there has a hard time recognizing that this is a change in the way we're looking at everything versus just the next 3-ring binder to be brought into the safety manager's office and be put up on the shelf. And that if you wait a few months, that 3-ring binder will become recycling material as well as the last one did. And so we've been trying to convey and communicate with primarily starting with the union safety and health activists, who are generally speaking, they're also the union health and safety committee members, about this, and to try to understand how we have done much of what we're talking about across the trade union movement in health and safety forever, and that we were trying to work with our employers to see a better outcome of the implementation of this change in philosophy. And I think you've also hit it spot on of the balance of including and recognizing that we have to have the right controls in place so that when something does go awry, those controls are there. But that balance has to have on the other side of it the prevention measures. So we need to make sure that both are happening. Both prevention and control, because either side of that's not adequate and certainly isn't changing the outcome of what we see going on in serious injuries and fatalities across our organization and what's hitting our members, or on a wider perspective, what's going on across this country, North America, or around the world.
And so when your safety committee members come back to you and talk about some of the findings that they have and some of the discussions they have, what are they saying are the popular items and pushbacks that they're getting when they're trying to implement this new, I guess, change of mind and this new concept of safety?
Yeah, so a couple of the things that our folks run into challenges with, I like to put this into kind of two buckets of types of hazards and unsafe conditions and concerns that our members bring to us. The first is I term as the kind of the traditional safety and health hazards, an unguarded piece of equipment, working from heights and needing better fall protection in place. Some of those traditional hazards. The other bucket being work organization issues and how work is organized in that workplace to get done, in the construct of what's going on in the economy and our society, of having fewer people to do the work that we used to have a larger crew, of having, because of retirements or folks leaving the workplace, an influx of inexperienced younger people that doing the work that don't have the institutional knowledge that those who left did, and those work organization issues in that other bucket. Again, those two things are of importance, and we hear from our members that come back from their health and safety committee roles, concerns on both sides of both of those buckets of the challenges to make certain the day-to-day health and safety, traditional health and safety hazards are addressed, but also the importance of recognizing those work organization issues as they are health and safety hazards in and of themselves, but they're also really magnify some of the traditional health and safety hazards.
So as we speak today, do you see where you're trying to incorporate this program, or let's say not program, let me rephrase that, as we're trying to actually implement this inside of your organization, do you see a lot more activity in reporting on what we would call traditional reporting? So let's say, for instance, accident reports, near-miss reporting, or things along those lines, or do you see that it kind of has stayed the same as this transformation is taking place?
So one thing I probably should have said when we were talking about kind of the overview of the organization itself. So we represent workers at the Steelworkers Union. We have about 700,000 members, and they work in roughly 2,500 workplaces across North America. So we've got a pretty broad array of both not only industries, like I mentioned earlier, but just different size of workplaces, different employers, and a lot of variables to make what is happening with our members and our health and safety committees at the facility level and our local unions very kind of broad and diverse in what they're seeing. So I think it's been very much of a mixed bag of the results of what folks have been seeing thus far. We following the Union Health, Safety, and Environment Conference that was held earlier this year, we have had some very positive feedback of workplaces trying to implement some parts or all of this philosophy when they've gotten back to work, and really moving away from the blame, shame, and retrain philosophy, and trying to do much more in the capacity of learning about health and safety and understanding what workers are doing on a normal basis and what had transpired when something went awry, an event occurred.
Now, James, if the listeners want to know more about you or about the United Steelworkers Union, where would they need to go?
So I think the best place is to the Steelworkers Union website. It's usw.org. And from there, the Health and Safety Department webpage has some information about what we do, and some of the investigations we've performed on serious injuries and fatalities are highlighted there with some of the learnings that we've had. And also a means to contact us from there is pretty easy from that spot.
Well, James, I really do appreciate your time on being on Safety FM here today.
All right. Thank you, Jay.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.
Join the fun on social media and find us on Facebook at Safety FM.